Well, Jason Moorhouse, what is the problem then? Why has Mr. Adams been so vocal about criticism of the regeneration in Castletown for, as he puts it, partially sighted
Yeah,
people?
I think it's a problem of design that when the square was done, the visually impaired perhaps didn't get to the forefront of the discussions. And it's one thing the department's kind of been looking at when they've gone to Peel and other places in the island, that you need to look at all groups and make sure all groups are actually spoken to from the onset, because it's much more difficult when you go back and try and make changes. And that's one problem we've had in Castletown, actually going back and making changes.
It's very grey, of course, isn't it? But that, I guess, was done to fit in with the surrounds of the castle and the limestone.
That's it. In terms of kind of that historical nature and the conservation area, it being appropriate for the town centre, it was all in keeping. And it's not until you kind of go below that surface and think about specific individuals that you kind of see there are issues here.
How much conversation have you had with Mr. Adams and indeed the commissioners?
It's been an ongoing process, really. I've spoken to Mr. Adams probably 3 or 4 times. We've had 2 meetings. I've spoken to the commissioners. Minister Harmer's been down. We've really looked at the problems and tried to come up with solutions. Some of the solutions have been quite slow and time consuming. Things like putting high visibility markings on the lampposts. It's been a slow process because you can't go out and just turn it into something that's high vis. You know, it's got to be visible for the partially sighted, but at the same time it doesn't want to detract from the conservation area we find ourselves in down there.
Is it a legal problem, though? Because legally, with the Disability Discrimination Act, aren't you meant to be doing these sort of things?
Oh, definitely, yeah. It's you know, every time he's come to speak to us, we've tried to listen as carefully as we can and try and make the improvements. We've done things like there was a bench outside Barclays Bank that has now been removed. It was in the original plans, and at the time it just wasn't considered to be an obstacle. But you know, looking down at that bench when it was there, it was quite clearly right in the doorway of Barclays, and that's been moved. And things like that, it takes time. You can't just go down with a hammer and knock it out, even though you'd like to at times. But
there's not much cost, I wouldn't imagine, to do all this.
As with anything, when you're dealing with kind of a government, you're not dealing with a one-man operation. Someone with a hacksaw can go down and cut it out. You know, it's various people to be spoken to, and it's more the time that's the concern. That's one issue. That's, you know, the financial cost isn't huge, but the time element is one that has been a slight problem.
Can I take you away from the square to the Apostles' Bridge? And is there a problem in Castletown in recognising the needs of minority groups? Because the gate that's been put in there and part of the flood defence scheme, it doesn't allow for a wheelchair or a buggy to go through.
No, it is a very, very narrow gap. It's something I've been consulting with the developers for the past 3 months, and it is frustrating that they've reopened the bridge and that hasn't been sorted. I've been in contact with the minister over the weekend, and we've got a clear plan going forward that can be sorted. So there is a solution, but it should have happened before today.
I was going to say, it's basic stuff, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. It shouldn't have gone on, dragged itself on this far yet. It should be easily sortable and quickly sortable.